Hey everybody, David here today, and I have an excellent video with regards to Fusion development. And so we're going to dig into this and we're going to talk about how to get the maximum amount of value out of low code, Azure services, and traditional development in today's video. So stay tuned. By the way, if you're watching this and you're new to my videos, I have recently structured a repo on GitHub. You can go up to github.com, search for David Soden, and from there you'll run across my picture that you see there, and so you'll know that it's my repo. In any event, down in the description box below, there is a link to the repo. This is going to be video number 3. I used to create separate repos for different videos, and so it started getting crazy. And so what I've done is lumped all of these together in one repo, and then I'm just labeling them out. So just a reminder that you'll find today's video in video number 3, folder video number 3. So today's topics that we're going to cover is what is Fusion development. We're not going to go too deep into it, but just kind of give you a good solid understanding of what that is. And then what we want to do is talk about the low-code adoption barriers that, is oftentimes considered within an organization. They try to weigh the pros, the cons, and as a result, there may either be adoption within the organization or there won't be adoption. And so then what we want to do is give you an example of an excellent use case that kind of really illustrates the opportunity for Fusion teams to work together to build the low-code solutions, or rather to come together to build these types of solutions. And then we're just going to talk generally about some resources. So to dig in, let's talk about Fusion teams and the departments and business focus, and specifically, let's talk about low-code developers. Now these are a special breed of developers because they come in 2 different flavors, and unlike your traditional developers, we have what's called a citizen developer. These are just general business users or people in the business, right? They are subject matter experts in a department or within a field that the company offers as a specialized service. The point is they know the process, or they know their area of what it is that they do extremely well. They're also very savvy with Excel. They know how to use Excel's formulas, and they use it in a more advanced user or power user way. Then there is the dedicated low-code developer. Now this could be a mix of a low-code developer in conjunction with maybe being a regular traditional development. But the bottom line is these people typically live within the IT in your organization, which then I just mentioned traditional developers. Think of C#, Java, React, things like that, right? That's obviously not an all-inclusive list, but in any event, now we start getting into some of the teams within the organization. So when you're creating apps or you're coming up with new purchases for tools or platforms or things that you're going to use within the business to deliver, I don't know, whatever it is that you're going to deliver, whether it's a tool to work or interface with clients, a new piece of software, whether it's there's a plethora of things, actually, honestly, to be honest with you, that fall under governance and compliance teams. And so as a result, we're going to look at today's example. And then, of course, you also have the operational teams that's within the organization. Now, these are the people that are responsible for productivity, dealing with budgets, and things of that nature. And so if we looked at this in a more graphical format, or even also more of a traditional format, you see that the citizen developer, the professional developer, and end users, they kind of go in this cycle. And there's always feedback that comes back from the end user that would go to the subject matter expert and or the person in IT designated toward providing these solutions, and they'll deliver Power Apps either on desktop or mobile. And then, of course, if there's anything additional that needs to be done, and this is always an optional step, this doesn't always have to be this way, but typically there's a professional developer that's there that may help out with something of maybe creating an API to integrate with system A to system B and things of that nature. And obviously, if you're a Microsoft shop and you're licensed for the Microsoft Power Platform, chances are you have Office 365, which means you have Azure Active Directory and a plethora of other Azure services available to you at your disposal. So one of the key concerns that come up when people start talking about low code, no code is that, the low code developers are initially first and foremost focused on delivering outcomes for the business. And they just so happen to use the platform to deliver these applications. Whereas a traditional developer, they're really or mainly focused on application development and or delivery or CI/CD. This is also going to lend itself well to the next point of discussion, which is the security and governance teams. And their main focus is compliance, as well as being able to audit who does what, where, and understand the why. So if something bad were to happen, there's an audit trail to figure out kind of how did we get there, or how did the breach happen, or things of that nature. And of course, with the way that the businesses work today, it has to be highly configurable and adaptable. So we don't want to get something that's so restrictive that, the security teams can't meet the needs of the organization just for the sake of security. That's not good either. So the other thing is, or the final piece of the puzzle, is the operational teams, right? And they're focused on value. They're also focused on quality, cost, and time reduction as well. And so when you think of all of these people coming together, there's a lot more involved than just low code, no code. And this is where Fusion, or the concept of Fusion development, and I'm going to expand that a little bit to talk about Fusion teams, because it really needs to involve all aspects of your organization. So I want you to consider the following use case. Here you have an HR department, and it doesn't matter what vertical or business industry that you serve, but all companies have an HR department. And as a result, you have staff. And then there's typically something called personally identifiable information. And this includes things like, here in the United States, we have things called I-9s, social security numbers, we have photo IDs, maybe W-4 or tax-related information, and of course salary-related documents are usually almost always part of the hiring process. And then of course you have finance, and these are going to include things like your banking statements, investment documents, and typically corporate agreements. So all of this information is highly, highly sensitive. And so when we start talking about the Power Platform and applications, inevitably a citizen developer is going to gravitate towards the easiest to use of the use case. And even some IT developers I see struggle with this. As a matter of fact, I was on a project recently and this very issue or topic came up. And so one of the things that you should do when you're looking at Power Apps is considering the following storage options. Where do you put these types of documents? Well, what about OneDrive? That might work. Well, maybe not, because here's the problem. OneDrive is usually licensed on an individual per user basis. And when employee turnover happens, this could result in lost data. It's also an additional, it's a pretty large process, to be honest with you, unless of course you've automated it. But the process around this for IT to manage this when somebody leaves, to go and capture their documents, export it out, put it in a shared environment, and then dole out specific documents that, where people need to have access to, the employees' documents at some point in time. And so this vicious cycle just continues to repeat itself. So that might lead you to think, hey, maybe this will just go into a SharePoint document library. And to be honest with you, SharePoint document libraries are pretty cool and they're pretty common, and they do have the ability to configure them for security. But the security is usually always an external thing to the application that you're building, which is fine. But the problem is that typically site owners or site administrators are also citizen developers or people in the business, like they know how to use a SharePoint site pretty well, but they're not really IT minded. They're certainly not, conscious and or aware of governance and compliance. And so this is where we start talking about maybe some of the shadow IT to start to creep in on this. And of course, that's additional overhead to have to manage who's doing what, where, why, and when. And there needs to be processes around that. Then we have Azure Blob Storage. Now this is typically reserved for traditional developers, and also the other thing that happens is this is usually managed by IT themselves. But the other good thing about it is that it's easy for security and governance teams to do what it is that they do. Plus, it's typically and almost always a system that has been vetted by these teams, and so it's almost always approved, and it is the preferred method or way, assuming you have premium licensing, of course, to do this. So one of the things I want to do is I want to show you a demo application. Now, by no means is this a full-blown application. It's just meant to give you an idea. It's also an accelerator to see how you may pull this off in your organization. And you can use this template in my sample app to kind of reverse engineer. But I'm going to go through some of that today for you so that you understand some of the idiosyncrasies and or nuances. So when you're dealing with Azure Blob Storage, this is a storage medium. It's a container in the cloud. If you're coming from Amazon, think of S3 buckets. Google has a similar service for storage as well. And so this is just depicting or emulating. I've got 8 records in a library or, in some computerized system. And so let's just think about the way, if you think of a CRM, right? You have a relationship between an account and contacts. So typically an account would have many contacts, or if you think about it in real business terms, right? You always have many contacts at a company that you're dealing with. And so in this use case, this is the parent information. These records are going to serve as the parent. And so we have 8 parent records, or think of them as 8 account level top records. And so instead of, if you're used to using Power Apps, you'll notice that I removed the little chevron and just put a little folder here. So I'm going to pick on Lee here, and let's click on this folder. And so what happens is this takes us to an area. Now it already knows that I'm dealing with this PID record number 3. And if you're not familiar with the term PID, it just stands for Parent Identifier. And that basically means the master or the record that owns these records. And in the context of this here, what we're doing is we're attaching a bunch of files to a record. So if we go back to the HR scenario, think about all of those sensitive documents. And so now what I can do is I'm just going to arbitrarily pick some images and graphics. Now in the Microsoft Power Platform, the control that I'm using here is used for uploading images. So when you get to this screen, you always get this pull down here. It shows all of the image files, but you can get to regular files by simply just switching this over to all files. So if I go over to documents and I just start scrolling down, we'll do this sample, which is a Power BI report. I'll pick that. So now this is in here, right? It says to change file. And if I click the Save to Blob button, it then uploads it to the Azure Storage. And it's associated with record number or PID number 3. And I can continue to just add many, many documents. So this is like that one-to-many relationship where as an account has many contacts. Well, in this context, an employee is going to have many onboarding documents or sensitive documents. Just pick my ugly mug there and we'll put that up there too as well. Right? And so I don't know, we'll just add one last one for good measure. We'll just pick this app sheet one logo there. All right, so we've got all of this information. Now, suppose I don't want to have any, I don't know, let's just say we don't want this 168 JPEG, which was actually, I think, my image. I can go ahead and delete that as well. So I'm adding and I'm deleting things out of the Azure Blob Storage. Now let's look at the back end of this so that you can really appreciate it. So if you haven't seen this before, this is a desktop piece of software that you can download. You don't have to download it, but it does kind of help make life a little bit easier. This is Azure Storage Explorer. Again, this is available for download on a PC, but you can also go into the portal and see what that looks like there. So here is under quick access, I have a storage container. I have a Blob storage account, and then I have a storage container called Power Apps underneath it. Think of a container almost like a folder. And so this is a folder inside of the main parent Blob storage. And so if I refresh this screen here, you'll see I now have this folder called number 3, and inside of the folder, I have those 2 files that you saw that I uploaded over here in the user interface experience. And you notice that the file that I deleted earlier, I'll go ahead and add that back real quick, so 168. And so now it's going to save it to Blob storage. It's going to upload it. And if I go back over here to where is folder number 3, which is this PID file, and I hit refresh, then what's going to happen is I now have that 168 file. So as you can see, this is really, really good. And the nice thing about it, because it's stored in Azure Blob Storage, typically IT only has access to tools like this Azure Storage. Also, anybody in compliance will have additional resources that you tie different Azure services together, such as Azure Monitor. And so this is really, really powerful. And so one of the neat things about this, I'm going to click on this this logo here. It says 168. This is my picture, and I'm going to try to download it. And so one of the things that's really neat, talking about governance and compliance, is that public access is not permitted on this particular storage account. Now, I explicitly set it up this way, and so this is really good because this means that the storage account is not open for public access, but you can still get to the application. You can still get to the files in the application. So over here I've used the function within the connector for Azure storage account, and if I click this download, you can see that I now have access to get to the file. If this was, let's just do the sample PIBX, I hit the download and it's going to download it so that I can open it with whatever software I need there. So you can still get to the files, and it's still bound to the account. Now, if you're watching this and you're a developer type, you simply just take the metadata and capture it off into a variable, and then you're going to take this metadata and store this in a table. Because the files themselves are stored in Azure storage account. You only need the connector to connect back to the storage account where all of this lives, and you've got all of the associated information to manage the files that's in the directory. And if you set it up properly, kind of like what I would consider somewhat properly, here where you're using a separation of concerns, you're keeping things in folders, and you're using good normal housekeeping practices, just like you would do in any folder or storage account. That way, literally, you don't have a blob or a blob of mess sitting up in your storage account, and programmatically, if the program were to crash, disappear, or maybe it just is end of life and you don't want to deal with it anymore, as long as you got a good folder structure out here, then it would make a lot of sense as to what information is in which folder and how it might pertain. So again, good housekeeping skills on the programming side can also make this quite usable. Also, something to keep in mind is if this were HR and HR documents, you can get things like Cloudberry that allows you to connect to cloud services such as Azure Blob Storage, and you can map a drive letter to your PC, such as drive letter S or L or M or something. And if you click on it, then you'll get into it just like a network storage file. So there's lots and lots and lots of flexibility with Azure Storage accounts, and the security and governance is really great. And now the whole point of all of this, now I'm just going to go ahead and hit save, which is going to emulate as if I went ahead and stored this information out, which I did not. It simply just reversed back, and what it did is it wiped out all of the information on the storage account just because I don't want to keep it. So if you see, I hit refresh and that folder number 3 is gone, which allows me to go in and re-demo all of this again. But my point here in showing you all of this here today was that the really nice pieces of this is that you can get these fusion teams to come together all within your departments to accomplish something. So low code, no code can and should be adopted more and more than it is, because it is essentially just the next evolution within your development stack within your organization, and because it fits so nicely in with everything, I really think that low code is really here to stay. Gartner's predicting that by 2025, 70 to 80% of all applications are being developed are going to be done in a low code, no code, or low code, no code platform. And so I want you to go ahead and scan this QR code on your phone if you have it. This is an electronic document. It's free. It's an ebook called Fusion Development: Approach to Building and Using Power Apps. So if you haven't seen this before, it's a really good read. It doesn't focus so much on the aspects that I brought up here, which is Fusion Teams, but it does touch base, I believe, on it a little bit. It's mainly focused on how to get traditional development and regular development and your normal application lifecycle management together as one unified team or effort. So go ahead and, if you haven't done so already, go ahead and click this link. I'm going to end the video here, and I hope you found a lot of value in it. It doesn't matter if you're on the business side of watching this or if you're an actual seasoned developer or maybe even a pro developer. So please like, subscribe, and share the video with others. Again, I'm trying to grow the channel, and any help that you guys can give me, I would greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much. Have a great day.